What's going on, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. Hope that everybody is having a lovely Monday, staying cool during this summer heat wave. Let's go ahead and get into the Real Housewives of Atlanta season finale. Game over, baby. It's over. It's a wrap. Everybody, looks beautiful in their dresses for the Oakley Gala. And my favorite, there's no surprise, Portia, even though she's not my favorite housewife, I would have to say that I can always appreciate Portia for serving us a look. Okay. Speaking of Portia, that's how this episode opens. Portia and Lauren are visiting Phaedra. As you guys know, Portia's cousin Londi, may she rest in peace, she passed. She was so young too. She was only 34. But Portia, has reached out to Phaedra because you guys know that Phaedra is a licensed mortician. So in addition to, being an attorney, a Reiki healer, Phaedra's also a mortician. She has 11, jobs. And shout out to Phaedra for always, having multiple streams of income. That is so important, especially nowadays with, the tariffs, child, and just inflation and, cost of living is out of control. So they are, talking about how Lottie passed. She was only 34. I'm just like, oh my goodness. They don't say how she passed. She was on the phone with Lauren, though. Um, but, may she rest in peace. Like, that's so sad. So, um, Phaedra took her own advice. You guys remember she gave Britt the advice of, when you have people over to your house, you want to be hospitable and be a good hostess. Always have, a nice, cute little charcuterie board and some champagne. So she had the champagne for the girlies, and just lifted their spirits. Phaedra was saying how she is, Lord, she's like the gatekeeper. Helping people on their way to the Lord. When they make that transition, she wants them to look good, and she's just, being Phaedra. But speaking of transition, Lonnie was on the phone with Lauren when she actually did pass. So I hope that Lauren, has somebody she could sit down with and unpack that, because I can't imagine, how difficult that would be. Londi was really big into serving her community as a part of her and, Portia Lauren's grandfather, Hosea Williams, who was a huge civil rights leader. And so, yeah, I really, pray for their family. Keep the Williams family lifted up in prayer. And may she rest in peace. She was definitely gone too soon. So the next scene we have Angela, who is visiting her therapist, Wendy, and they're talking about, Angela and Charles's marriage. So I think they've been going, as long as they've been married. And so, which is nice, right? Because you want to have somebody there to kind of iron out the kinks that you might have in your relationship before things snowball. So they're talking about, trust issues. And Wendy says that, the Oakleys have come a long way, right? Because in the past, Charles did step out on their marriage. He did admit to his infidelity, but they worked through that. Again, with the help of the therapist. They said that Wendy's like the third person in their marriage. So Angela brings up the strain that the houses, right, have put on their marriage. Um, you know, she has several, I think she has like 5 multi-million dollar homes, and she is $2 million in debt. And it's unfortunate, right? Because right now, and this is just my opinion, but I don't think that this is a buyer's market. Um, Before Kamala Harris lost the race, she said that we will be in a recession by the summertime. And again, looking at the cost of inflation, cost of living by itself has gone up 24% within the last 5 years since 2020. So, I mean, that is, astronomical. And not to mention just not even just inflation, the price of eggs, but now the tariffs, and it's just a headache and a half. So a lot of people don't have a lot of disposable income to buy multi-million dollar homes. And no shade to Angela, because she is one of my favorite housewives. I think that she had a really good season as a beginner, as a newbie. But the home that she showed us, it was not giving $3 million price tag. Like, it wasn't really put together. The pool wasn't clean. It was unfinished. It looked a mess. And so her asking Charles to pump constantly and consistently pump money into these homes is putting a strain on their marriage. And I could see that, right? Because Charles strikes me as someone who is very, pragmatic, and he's retired, so I'm, assuming that he has a pension from the NBA. But constantly putting your money into homes that are just kind of sitting on the market and depreciating in value is not a very wise decision. If memory serves me, I think that Angela said that she bought all five at one time, which, my grandparents were in real estate. And what they would do is they would buy, this was, again, back when real estate was affordable, but, and they also had, a separate bar, but they would take the profits from the bar. And after they, paid off their own home, and they would save up and get their homes from an auction. Now, this is, of course, back, with redlining and all that. So the homes in black neighborhoods were affordable. They weren't trying to buy multi-million-dollar homes. I don't even know if they could have back in those days. But the point is, they were successful and they pulled their money together. And then they would take the profits from, the second home. And after a year or two, or whatever the timeline was, they would buy their third, and so on and so forth, until they had, multiple homes, and they would, consistently flip them and rent them, and et cetera, et cetera. But Angela, you know, jumping and buying all five homes at once, and they're not finished, and she has to, make all these repairs. And I mean, it's a headache and a half. I can't even imagine being $2 million in the home in this economy. So I understand, her being really stressed out, and just she's trying to protect her marriage, and she wants things to go well with her and Charles. So Wendy's helping, them navigate that situation. Um, because we've seen it, like when Charles, she called when she was in Grenada during their eighth wedding anniversary, and he was acting like he didn't want to come to the phone. So who knows if he was mad that, she was in Grenada and he was, at home, or if he was still thinking about, the debt that Angela got them into. But she tells Wendy that, the other day that they went to a cooking event, and, Kelly's event at Williams Sonoma, and a young man walked up to them, and the guy said, here's a toast to Angela, whose husband is cheating on her. And so Wendy says, oh, that's grimy, which is true. It was grimy. But Charles said, whatever he's saying, it's a lie. And so she asks, do you trust Charles? Um, and so, Angela says, yeah. I mean, Charles and I have been through a lot, but and I didn't always trust him before. And Wendy validated that, saying that he wasn't always necessarily trustworthy, and rightfully so. But she said, now I do trust him. And trust is so critical, in any relationship, especially a marriage. So, she says that she doesn't want to have him feeling like he's an easy target, because he wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling like he is targeted. And so Angela says that she's not ready to explore that. She starts tearing up. She's like, I don't want to go there. And so Wendy kind of backs off. She's like, I know. Um, but it is unfortunate, that this man crashed Kelly's event just to, go after Angela and Charles. Like, who does that? It was so tacky. And then come to find out that, he has his own situations. I mean, people, like I said, once you put yourself out there on reality TV, the internet sleuths are better than the FBI. They have time, and they will go through every parking ticket, every third grade report card. I mean, just everything. So they did some digging on this young man and found out that he has an interesting record. He's actually on a registry. So, and I'm not talking about a baby or bridal registry. I guess it would be groom, but y'all get the point. So Wendy asks Angela if she wants to make a statement. She says yes, and she said, "Well, what statement do you want to make?" She says, "I want to be left alone." She really said, "Leave me the f alone," because I'm sure that she's probably tired, right? She feels like people are really coming for her, um, and I feel like the Real Housewives, not even just Atlanta, but almost all the franchises, right? They do a little bit of hazing toward the new girl. If you guys remember, Monique Samuels when she went on Potomac for the first time, and Giselle, who, she's Giselle reminds me of somebody who is like the quintessential, mean girl. She's an AKA. She gives like hazing vibes. She asked Monique, does she have a home? And Monique's like, we have 4 homes. Shout out to Monique and Chris Samuels with their 4 homes. She gagged Giselle, but Giselle couldn't stand her since. So I'm actually looking forward to Monique coming back on the Real Housewives of Potomac as a friend of, but also seeing that dynamic between her and Giselle when Robin's not there. But anyway, so yeah, I feel like Angela and Britt both were hazed a little bit. Um, so the next scene is where the ladies are getting ready for Shamia's performance at the gala. And Gerald, I feel like this is the first time we've seen. No, it's not the first time because he was at the party. So the second time we've seen him on camera, that was like outside of FaceTime. But he came to support his wife, and she's backstage, getting ready. They cut to Drew. Drew's singing "Why Did You Throw It All Away," and they cut to Ralph. But she said that she's here to give constructive criticism, and so Shamia's hugging everybody. And so Phaedra is in her confessional saying that, Kelly and Britt are like the fake freaking frack. And it's like, I feel like they never even wanted to be a freaking frack. It's unfortunate that they fell out. But, Britt, she has come across on camera as somebody who, really hasn't shown up for anyone but herself. And that's unfortunate because Kelly has consistently been there for Britt and the other ladies throughout the season. And so the one time that, Kelly was going through her divorce and Shamia and Angela showed up for, Kelly, even Angela, just calling, but Britt didn't do any of that. She didn't call, text, nothing. It hurt Kelly, you could tell. And so I don't think they were trying to be the fake anything. They were just Britt and Kelly. So Shamia goes out on stage, and she said that this was the moment that she was praying for. She has all her friends and family there. She has entertainers to support her. RL is there from the group Next, and she comes out and she starts singing. Her daughter opened for her, and so she's kind of twerking with the chairs, and she listen. She's not a bad singer, right? She's okay. You know, I feel like Drew is a little bit better of a songstress than Shamia, but she tried to hit a note that was a bit sharp. She didn't really quite hit it. It reminded me of Whitney Houston, talking about Paula Abdul when she said, "Mommy," she's singing off key on the record. So that was the first thing that I thought of. But listen, Shamia wasn't at a concert. She wasn't at a, event that people bought tickets for, I don't believe. I think this was just an opening for the fundraiser. So I feel like she was actually volunteering her time. So, she said that she wanted to get back to her passion project, which is singing, something that she really loved. She has a husband who's holding down the bills, so she can do that, right? And I'm happy for her because life is short. You want to do things that make you smile and make you happy. And so she says she needs to get back to doing music, so that's what she's doing. So shout out to Shamia. Like I said, she has, RL and other people there supporting her. And so, her friends are there. Shout out to her. Go Shamia. So, of course, when they asked the ladies how they thought that Shamia did, I mean, they all said that she did well. But in the confessionals, Britt said that, she gets an E for effort. And Drew said that she, wished that Shamia would have practiced a little bit more. She said that out the gate, though, that she was going to give constructive criticism. And I kind of agree with that. I feel like if she would have worked with a vocal coach, or maybe even, RL or somebody a little bit more, she would have been able to hit those notes and it would have been a little bit better. But she's learning, she's growing, she's progressing. And so let's, hopefully she can do better next season or, years down the line. So Britt and Kelly are talking about the followers on Instagram. So she said that Britt said that Kelly's followers jumped 80K. And Kelly says, well, she counters with, I didn't know somebody was stalking my page. And like I said, it's unfortunate, right? Because they're arguing in front of the baby, Shamia's daughter is there. But they're going back to, Britt. They cut back to the scene where Shamia's talking about, you can't be that girl showing up with a Rolls Royce and Birkins and then not giving anything. So Shamia goes backstage and thanks all the ladies, and then she says that she wishes Portia was there, but she understands her absence. And so the rest of the ladies, though, were there to support Shamia. So Shamia confronts Britt about Cynthia, and Cynthia came to her earlier and said that Britt was just talking behind her back and talking mess about her, and that she told Portia she's seen all the text messages from Shamia, and so she's like, What are you talking about?" She said that she wasn't being a very good friend to Portia, and Shamia's like, "You're lying." She said that she's never shown anything to Britt about her and Portia. And so, Brittany's saying that she can deny it all she wants to, but she can't lie about the text messages. And this was, months before Portia and Shamia made up. I wish they would have, posted the receipts, but we had to just take her word for it. I do believe Brittany about the text messages, and I feel like Shamia, she feels bad about it now, so she's essentially saying that Britt is lying. But it's unfortunate because I feel like Brittany has had beef with almost every housewife on the show. So I understand her not wanting to come back. I mean, even Bravo, network themselves, she got beef with everybody. Okay. Britt said when it goes up, she says up and it's stuck with all the housewives, Andy, the company, NBC Universal, everybody. Okay. But I will say it was low when Britt brought up Shamia's daughter because you don't bring babies into it, right? She said that Shamia wasn't being a very good mother, that, she was popping shots, that she didn't go straight home. She was kicking it in Miami with Kelly. You never know what people are going through, right? Especially since Britt's not a mother herself. Like, I would never tell somebody who, is a mother that they're not doing X, Y, and Z. Because I don't have kids myself, and I feel like they would look at me like, I was crazy. so, and so Shamia said, "Well, that you're popping pills," and she's like, "Oh, I am," and they're just going back and forth, just going for the jugular, going back and forth with each other. I mean, but that's Kelly, said that she was popping pills, and then now Shamia is saying that she was popping pills, and it's like, okay, well, everybody seems to have the same consensus now. Did Shamia say that she saw her? It's like, I don't know if she's just going off of Kelly's word or what, where she's getting her information, but listen, multiple people are saying the exact same thing, so who knows? And she was talking about how she got, butt booty naked in Grenada. And it's just like, and maybe she was trying to advertise her line, right? Is there her line named like Bare Naked, something like that? Anyway, I thought that was funny. So the next scene is, Kelly's waking up her twin girls, and she's preparing breakfast for them. I really appreciate the fact that Kelly is being gentle, like the gentle parenting, waking up her kids with a sweet song. So that's really nice to see. And so Ralph calls Drew and asks, if he can come upstairs. So he comes upstairs while she's getting her hair done. He starts playing the piano. Then they shoot to Britt and her husband looking at a private jet. So before they were looking at a car, which they didn't buy. Now they're supposed to be looking at a private jet. And I'm just like, and she, this is the first time she brings up, you know, just during the episode, right? That, before she, he puts a baby in her. And every single time she does it, he's just like, you know what I mean? Like he's just gives this sigh, like he's just over it, right? Because she says it again later on in this episode when the whole family's there. Um, I don't feel like he's really with it, but it's something that she continuously brings up, so who knows? So anyway, they're making French toast. Goes back to Kelly and her girls, and she says that being a single mom is not for the weak. She says that she doesn't want to be confused with a wino, but she considers herself a wine mom. That's the only way that she can stay sane, raising 4 girls. I can only imagine, especially like twins and stuff too. And I think they're only like 8, so she has 10 more years to go. Child, especially and dealing with that horrible ex-husband of hers who refuses to help her out. Oh my goodness. So Kelly talks about how the new restaurant that she wants to open. She's trying to make it happen in the Nether, the location, the Silver Springs location. But again, things are kind of postponed with her divorce, and it's still pending. She said it's definitely not been easy trying to get the Sandy Springs location open. She wants to be careful, right? Which is smart. She has to do the renovations. And she's also still married. So she's like, if you're still married, it's essentially that contract, that business, dealing. So she wants to be careful to not allow her soon to be ex-husband to come in and take, her assets, her hard work. I don't blame her. So her daughter, Chance, asks if she could be a manager. And she's like, listen, at this point, you might be the manager, the cook, and the host. Okay. Shout out to I don't know if you guys have ever worked, like I've worked in a diner before, and it was just one of those things where people would seat themselves, but it's like, when somebody's not there, you just like all hands on deck. So you're like the waitress, like the hostess, you know what I'm saying, helping the cook out in the back. Child, we did it all. So anyway, Ralph asks Drew, how did we get here? How did we get to this particular place? And while the kids are in Chicago with her mom. But it's like, sir, do you remember being in Tampa? Like, he reminds me so much of Martell Holt. Oh my goodness gracious. It's almost like the narcissist playbook is they'll, throw rocks and then hide their hands. Like, they'll step out on their marriage. And I don't know if it's entitlement, I don't know what it is. But then when their wives decide to leave them or divorce them, right? Shout out to Melody Cherie Holt or Rogers. I'm sorry, Mel. But you know what I mean? She went from Holt to Rogers. So shout out to Mel. But once they decide to leave after being disrespected and having their vows, disregarded by their husbands, the husbands have the nerve to be like, well, how could you? How did we get here? What happened? You decided that you didn't want to keep your end of the bargain. Even in the Bible, the Lord says that you can divorce if your spouse is unfaithful. So the ladies aren't doing anything wrong, but it's the entitlement for me. Like, it's these men thinking that they can, have extra women on the side, have all these extracurricular activities that they're doing, putting their wives, health at risk, putting their own lives at risk, right? But just not being good role models for their children, just not being, you know, faithful husbands, and then got the nerve to ask, how did we get here? Like, what do you mean? Like, do they not? That's why I don't know. I don't understand the disconnect. Um, I don't know. It's the entitlement for me. So Drew says that, her and Ralph really don't communicate that much. He's talking about how there needs to be co-parenting agreements while he's, playing at the piano. And he says that, the judge has put into place that he can't be with the kids when he wants to. He can't take them to school. He can't do certain things. So Drew said, well, look, even if the court says that, those are your kids too, and I never want to take the kids away from you. So shout out to Drew, right? Like, she's trying to be flexible, and she's, letting him know that even if their marriage, wasn't successful, that she doesn't look at it as an absolute failure because they have beautiful children from that bond. So that's a blessing. And so, Ralph says in the future, they want, or she says that they, want to communicate without arguing. And that's the thing too, right? Like, we know that Ralph and Drew, um, they don't necessarily uphold those boundaries all the time, right? We saw him online feeding her steak, and we see him online um, basically humiliating her. And it's unfortunate because, again, I feel like this, it's a power play, right? Like, he's trying to maintain that control over Drew, because he knows that he messed up. Like, for him to even posit the question, how did we get here? It, Drew's better than me, because I would have been petty, and I would have walked and got, in my purse or something, got a handheld mirror, got a mirror from somewhere, and held it right up to his face and said, the day that you decided to, dishonor our vows, the vows that you took, before God and, all our family and friends, etc., that's how we got here, right? Like, you decided to just completely disrespect our marriage. Um, so until he's able to, take accountability, he's going to continue to ask those questions, which, again, like I said, it blows my mind. But you have to have a certain level of emotional maturity and intelligence, and, for you to be able to accept that. And unfortunately, he's not there yet. So speaking of, relationships, we have Phaedra with Shep. Shep. She calls him Chi Chi, which I think is really cute, right? It's a cute nickname for Chet. But we met him on Married to Medicine when Sweet Tea Letitia had a speed dating event. And so we know that, he went to Florida with the cast there. But she said that they've been dating for 4 months. He is very, tall, dark, handsome. He's younger than her. So listen, I'm not mad at it. So they are on a date having, they're making their own charcuterie boards and, having some nice drinks with it. And so they're feeding each other. He's feeding her strawberries, and they're flirting back and forth. And, the banter is really cute. Now, word on the curb is that Phaedra, Phaedra has paid this young man, that he's a boyfriend for hire. I don't know. I feel like, it's a possibility just because we've seen that before, right? With Kenya, shout out to Walter. Um, who else? Stacy with on Potomac, that her boyfriend for hire put her on blast and said that the payment was in arrears and that, it was overdue. So I don't know. But anyway, she invites Chet to Chi Chi. She calls him Chi Chi to the fundraising gala with Charles and Angela Oakley. So, he said that he's going to be there. And they were talking about, kissing in the private jet. If you guys remember, that's when Phaedra decided to make her exit. One thing I will say, Phaedra is very dramatic. And so, which, and I was, oh yeah, okay. I was wondering, but yeah, they were all in Florida. So she, yeah, had a private jet waiting on her to take her from Florida back to Atlanta, with Chi Chi on it. So they're cute. Like I said, I don't know if it's a for hire situation or not. Um, I'm going to say allegedly because I don't feel like that's legal, except outside of like what Nevada. But anyway, shout out to Chi Chi and Phaedra. Okay, so Britt is hosting, a family gathering in her home. Her mom has moved in with her and her husband. She said that she hasn't even been able to have a three-way call with her family for months. Her sister, Cher, was crying over the phone because of all of her grief. So the family is still, trying to heal from that. But Britt said she feels like she's always the one extending herself. So she says that today she needs the family to, just kind of step up and be there for her. So she introduces her in-laws to, her family. This is the first time that her entire family is going to be at the house. So, she says she didn't have a wedding with the family, so her mom really hasn't had an opportunity to meet all of the in-laws. So that's nice, right? Getting everybody together. She said she wasn't really able to do so before because of COVID. So now that that's kind of tapered a little bit, she feels like it's a good time to get everybody together. And so, everybody promises to do better and, how it goes, life be life and child. The only time you really get to see folks is graduations or funerals. So it's nice, like I said, that Brittany just carved out that time and everybody made the time to go and, be on the show and support her. So she says that she has an announcement and everybody, is like, oh, you're going to have a baby? And she's like, no, which she's sitting there drinking champagne. Y'all, I don't know why she asked that, but she said that they're moving forward with the ceremony. And so, she says that she wants everybody to be there, but everyone promises they will be there. But I was thinking to myself, like, why would she be drinking champagne if she, like most people would have water or, some kind of juice? Child, Lord, blood, if Brittany decides to have kids, bless them babies, bless them babies. So finally, we get to the gala, right? So it is a fundraising event that Angela Oakley and Charles Oakley put on. You guys know Angela said that she, when she was younger, they didn't always have a whole lot of food in the house. She grew up impoverished. And so she said that she wanted to make sure that everybody had a meal, right? So they work with high schools and shelters. They fed 3,000 people during the Super Bowl at Skid Row. They fed 3 or 4,000 people. And so Charles is saying, they're just trying to see what, people need and help out. And that's so commendable. So their goal is to raise $50,000. They more than doubled it. It was over $100,000 that they raised. So shout out to the Oakleys for that. So Angela says that she hopes that the ladies can come together and just have a really good time. As you guys can see there, shout out to Getty Pictures Images and the photographer, but everybody looks really nice. Like I said, my favorite look of the night was Portia. I love her gown. I feel like she, always understands the assignment in regards to, just dressing up. But Portia's been there for a minute. You know what I mean? Like she's not an OG, but she gets it right. Cynthia, I know she said she wanted to be a little bit more understated this season because she's a friend of. She wanted to allow the rest of the girls to kind of shine through. So shout out to Cynthia. And Angela, I like her dress as well, right? Very unique design that looks really good on her frame. So, and the rest of the ladies look lovely as well. So now we're getting to the crux of, Angela doing some digging and finding out who essentially, hired Marcus to come to Kelly's event and say that Charles was cheating on Angela, right? Because again, like I said, that was just so rude and inappropriate for anybody to do that. I don't care how much he was paid. You could never pay me enough money to do that and try to ruin somebody's marriage in public on, a TV show. Like, no. But that's me. So Portia talks about how, Britt said that Shamia is still talking about her. So, she's trying to bury the hatchet. I guess. She says that she wants to move forward essentially. Um, I don't know. We will see because they've had this back and forth dynamic for a while, right? I feel like ever since Portia found out that Shamia was marrying Gerald and essentially getting the life that she wanted to manifest with Simon, like hers didn't pan out, but Shamia's is thriving. I feel like there's been tension ever since. So Angela and Charles, they go up to the podium and they talk about, giving back to not only their family but also the neighborhood. And they are, highlighting some important people of the night. Um, Charlene Ingram, who is the CEO of Meals on Wheels in Atlanta. So I feel like that's really important. Unfortunately, those are one of the things that's going to get cut under the new Trump administration. So I'm so glad to see that Angela and Charles are helping raise money for them. They also honor the founder of the Purse Foundation, who is helping out in the DV situation. So they're helping survivors of DV again, much needed in the community. And so Angela says that she also wants to take a moment to bring one of her new friends to the podium, Portia Williams. Listen, Angela's a better woman than I am. I'm sorry. I don't want to seem petty, but I promise you, if somebody says a few weeks back that they were going to try to F my husband, I'm not honoring them. I'm not calling them to the podium. I'm not honoring them. She wouldn't even invite Portia into her home. If you guys remember, they had their talk on the tennis court. Okay. So I don't know if Charles is behind it. I don't know if Angela is just trying to, start over, turn over a new leaf, which is great, right? But it would just be something that like I said, I wouldn't try to, necessarily hold a grudge, so to speak. I would always be cordial, but I wouldn't be honoring people in public who said that they were going to try to ruin my marriage. That's what I'm saying. I feel like multiple people are trying to come for Angela and her marriage. I don't know if it's out of jealousy, and I guess so because Charles did make a point, right? He said that he was the only husband at the reunion. So I feel like with Angela also being a newbie on the show, this is her first season, that people have been targeting her and Charles, unfortunately. But yeah, Portia said that even if she was joking, even if she was drunk, I don't care. Drunk, speaks a sober mind. I wouldn't have called her to the front of my event, but again, or my gala. But that's me. So Portia gets up there. She's emotional, rightfully so. She's talking about her cousin Lottie, and may she rest in peace. And she leaves the stage again. She's getting emotional. And this is the one time I'm going to give Portia grace for, walking out and leaving early, because either she's not been attending a whole lot, or she has been walking out of a lot of people's, confrontations and their conversations. But I get that, right? That she's emotional. That Londi, passed away. So Shamia says, she's just going to leave it in God's hands. And, they all want her to take a deep breath and, just kind of center herself. But, like I said, this was not, in my opinion, this was not one of Portia's best seasons. I'll just say that. So then Drew and Angela, they go and they are talking about Marcus, the man of the hour. So the ladies all get together on the couches outside, and the donations that they raised was $107,000. So shout out to the Oakleys. But Angela was just saying that Kelly went over and proposed a toast. They were talking about the toast with Marcus at her event, and so she says that she finds it odd to Kelly that it happened in the middle of her event, and so Portia's like, "Are you questioning Kelly?" And listen, I get why she would, because you know that's one thing that Angela was talking to her therapist Wendy about, right? Charles feeling targeted, Angela feeling targeted, and it's not without validity. Like, I feel like they have been targeted this season with Portia being messy, saying that she wanted to essentially come for Charles and sleep with him. And now, we have Marcus over here ruining Kelly's event. Angela doesn't know these people. This is her first season with these group of ladies. So I feel like it's a fair question. Obviously we know that Kelly didn't do it, but I mean, it's a fair question to ask because it was Kelly's event and she specifically went out of her way to invite Charles. The whole thing is just real sus. So I understand why she asked Kelly. And I'm glad that she did it in front of all the ladies. Like, she wasn't trying to be behind anybody's back. That's one thing I can appreciate about Angela and Charles, right? They're both really honest and direct and transparent. Kelly, on the other hand, she's like, I can't believe Angela that she would say that. That's such a nasty moment, a nasty thing to say. She's like, nope, that's not my thing to do. And so, well, she said when she talked to her husband about it, he said that things just don't add up, which sounds like Charles. But she says that, she wasn't certain if she had sent someone or, what was really going on. So, and Kelly, she asked Britt, and Britt said, I'm a married woman. I would never want to sabotage your marriage. Again, she makes it about herself. She doesn't want anything to happen with her and her marriage. So, I mean, Kelly bumps Shamia when she says that, though. Oh, man. Brittany is her confessional. Like, I can't believe Angela would think that this was me. How could I have this much power? It's like, Britt, just relax. So she says Drew and, her were trying to get to the bottom of it. And she thinks that, they did get to the bottom of it. So they ask, where is he? And, they're like, where he at? And so Drew gets up and she walks over and she goes and gets Marcus. So she brings Marcus over and introduces him to all of the ladies. And so as soon as she does that, Charles Oakley comes over and he's like, you got to go. Like, you got to get Joe behind out of here. He starts cussing him out. And, Marcus is like, I don't want any trouble. And so, Charles is like, he disrespected you last time, right? And so Angela runs after him and she's like, no, leave him alone. And they're going back and forth. And she's like, trust me, trust me. And Charles is like, I'm not trusting you. They going to have to sit with Wendy after this. Roll the tape to Wendy. But Marcus says that he apologized to Charles. He says he was sorry. And so Angela's trying to allow Charles to let him speak. But, Charles is being Charles, right? He's a protector. He's a husband. And he's angry. And I understand that. So they talk about Charles's reputation in the NBA, that he was called the enforcer. And so Portia says that she knows why he got that name, because he's about to enforce something right now. So Charles says, he points a finger in Marcus's face. He says, you're lucky. That's all I got to say about that. And so Charles gets angry pretty much and he stomps off, right? And so he takes the mic off and he's like, I'm tired of it. I can't take anymore. So Charles leaves. He exits stage left. And then Marcus has a seat and he says, there's somebody in this circle that's not happy with Angela. And so everybody's looking around. So Portia says, well, you need to say who it is, right? And so the ladies are kind of on pins and needles. And he looks right at Phaedra and he says, Phaedra. And I'm so glad that he did, because let me tell you, she has the exact same look that she had when she was confronted on season 9. So he says that Phaedra is the godfather of Atlanta. She said the godfather of what? Oh, so she's in her confessional talking about keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Like, this is not traitors. So she says that, she's easy to blame. She's an easy target. But, she's like, I didn't do it. I already had my marriage destroyed on national TV. She's like, why would I come for anybody else's marriage? Who knows why Phaedra does the thing that she does, right? But she says that he's crazy. He's never met her. And so he's like, no, he dropped off the envelope to me. Like, he's very calm, very matter of fact. So Cynthia's like, I know the Auntie Phaedra did not drop off receipts like that. You know what? To be honest, y'all, I believe him. I don't know. After what happened with, Candy and everything, I have to say I believe him. I hope that he has kept the envelope, kept those receipts. He may need them, but Shamia was, in her confessional eating popcorn, spilling it all down her dress. She's like, I can't even put my popcorn in my mouth because I'm so engaged with the mess and the foolishness. Okay. She said that his connect's name is Junebug. Listen, that was my uncle's name before he passed. Rest in peace to Uncle Junebug. I'm telling you, everybody in my family, that was my mother's youngest son or youngest brother. Okay, my grandparents' son. He was the baby of the family. That's exactly what his nickname was too, Junebug. And so, you know, Portia said that this is a scheme that Todd has set up for the BS. Okay, shout out to Auntie Bertha. They cut to her. She said, Todd, I don't know where you at, but we know that you did this. I'm telling you, this is a mess. So Marcus gets up and he walks away. And I don't know. Shout out to Junebug. Where are you hiding at? Let me hear from you because we need to get to the bottom of it. So Angela stands up and she's like, Phaedra, what is it? Is it the ring? Is it a marriage? You want one? Of course we know that she wants one, right? But anyway, Phaedra, she's like, know me. She's just deny. We know Phaedra. She said, but it's love, right? Angela says, I trusted you. Um, and Phaedra says, you're accusing me with no proof. We have somebody right there, Marcus, who ran everything down, right? They're both from Athens. He has a connect, Junebug. He has the receipts. And so she says, that Phaedra called her and she says that, Phaedra has the memory of an elephant, that his name was Marcus and such. I believe Angela too. I believe everybody except Phaedra because Phaedra has a history of lying. She has a pattern of behavior that has been recognizable in earlier seasons. So, listen, if Marcus said it, Angela said it, you know what I mean? Junebug said it. It's like, shout out to Junebug. Put him on next season, bravo. She says, Angela said that all roads lead to Phaedra. And I absolutely 100% believe it. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there. This is all alleged, okay, because Phaedra is still a lawyer. But like I said, looking back at earlier seasons, one thing about the law is there's legal precedence for a reason, right? So if it were me, and I was, even though I wouldn't ever do anything as tacky as what Marcus did, but like I said, he was very calm. He was very matter of fact when he led, with all those receipts that he had. I really wish he would have brought the envelope and the receipts to the confrontation at the gala, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm surprised that nobody brought up season 9, what happened with Candy. Maybe they did, and the editors just cut it out. I don't know, because Bravo production is really shady and it's very biased. So I'm sure they don't want to implicate themselves. But listen, they brought back Phaedra for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and she's still up to the same old, same old. Like, girl, you didn't learn anything from season 9, child. Anyway, I don't feel like Angela has any reason to lie. But Angela did tell her to her face that you're doing the same stuff that you did in this friend group that you did in the old friend group. And I'm glad that she said that. That's one of the reasons why I like Angela and Charles. They're both very direct. You know what I mean? They say what they mean and they mean what they say. So, but Angela took it a little far. She says, you let your kids, visit their father. And so Kelly is loud and, she's right beside Phaedra. She's like, kids are off limits, which they are. Leave the kids out of it, But, and then they drag Britt into it. Britt be catching all kinds of strays. Shamia gonna talk about the stretch marks on, Britt's mouth that Angela said. Oh, I'm like, let's keep it to the person of the hour, right? Phaedra Parks. But anyway, so Portia's trying to stick up to, for her friend as well, for Frack. And, she's like, well, fight me at the reunion, B. I'm just like, anyway, that's the end of the episode. They said after 3 years. So the episode ends. So they said, after 3 years, Kelly finally closed the doors on her marriage in September 2024. She is preparing to open new doors to her Sandy Springs Nana Chicken and Waffles location sometime in spring or summer 2025. So shout out to Kelly. I definitely want to try it next time I go to Atlanta. She says that she'll be double checking the guest list for the grand opening. I know that's right, because her husband is, from what we understand, he has some anger issues for sure. So she definitely should check her guest list. But Angela was still going off on Phaedra, and Britt gets up and leaves, and she's like, I'm done with these ladies, and she's like, I'm done with the foolishness, and she takes her mic off. So that's the last time we see Britt eating. But it says Britt is using her clean slate to open a new insurance agency. She's also working hard to release Bare Naked so that the masses can be snatched just like her. Bravo producers are so shady. This is, of course, before she decided to sue them for $20 million. But anyway, so they go on to Drew. So Drew's album, quote, I Did It To Me, was released in March of 2025. And it says, while her music career is on a high, her relationship with Ralph is still on a low as he continues to reside in his, his basement apartment in the sky with an end to the divorce nowhere in sight. Next, it says, while baby Shiloh continues to make progress, Shamia has a new surrogate and hopes to welcome a baby boy soon. Her single, Never Had, was released in March of 2025. She hopes that the listeners don't talk over it this time. Bravo, y'all, it's so shady. Oh my gosh. So, it says that Phaedra's booked and busy, adding more jobs to her resume until her boys retire her. Meanwhile, her chocolate prince, Chi-Chi, is still satisfying her sweet tooth. So, shout out to Chi-Chi. Okay, so it says Angela sold 3 houses, but unfortunately, 2 have been lost. However, she's staying cool under pressure until her next business venture, Fangi, which is a line of fans, hits the market. Okay, so shout out to Angela and her fans. No word on when she and Charles will renew their vows. So, I mean, I hope that their marriage can stay strong because it has been a target pretty much, all season, which again, like I said, is really unfortunate. So Cynthia apologizes to Portia, in the lobby. She says she's apologized for overstepping because Portia says, I'm 43 years old. I'm going through a lot with my divorce. So, she's not focused on her beef with Shamia. They do cut to a final scene, though, where Portia is, picking up toys and she's on the treadmill. So she's like, listen, finally, right, with ICE detaining her husband, Simon, and he's now, I don't think he's in Nigeria anymore, though. I feel like he went to Qatar or in Dubai. But she's able to film in the home. So shout out to, Portia and her 15 minutes of filming, 15 minutes of fame and filming in their home. But she says right now, she's staying put. She's raising Pilar, who's cutie patootie, and her mom comes over and, they talk about the divorce. She said emotionally she wasn't ready to divorce, but she didn't want to roll over and be taken advantage of. She said that's something that she did learn from her first divorce with Cordell Stewart. So she says she has a date for court, and she asked the baby to go in the other room, but she says that she's been divorcing as long as she's been married, 15 months, which is unfortunate. It reminds me of Kenya. Kenya, I think her divorce took longer than when she was actually married. But she said that she's hopeful when they go to court next month that the judge will just side with her and enforce the prenup, which in real time we know that that's exactly what happened. that Simon is overseas. And I don't know how she's going to get the $40,000 a month, but she did win the judgment in the court proceedings. But she says, she has post-divorce clarity. So her and Diane clink the glasses. It says Simon was detained while entering the country in February 2025, leaving the divorce on ICE. On ICE, they are so shady. Shout out to the shady Bravo producers. So then they cut to, the trailer for the reunion. I made a whole separate video about that if you guys want to go check it out. But it's going to be, in my opinion, I hope it's going to be entertaining because I hate when they stretch it out to 3 parts when it could just be 2, but I'm looking forward to it. So I have to cover all 3 parts. But Charles definitely, he gagged them when he said, "Why are y'all worried about me and mine over here?" He said, "Where are y'all's men at? Where's y'all's husbands? I'm the only husband on stage." So Portia said, "Woo!" And Andy just put his head down. We find out that, they was kissing Candy in the club, and we find out that, that just, it's a mess. It's just going to be messy. So that they're talking about, Drew said that Phaedra was a flop, and Portia says that she needs to be worried about who Ralph is flip-flopping with in the basement. They also accused, Drew of wanting to be with Dennis for beats. It's just it's messy. I'm looking forward to it. So you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk with you in the next one. Take care, aces. Bye.